Welcome to Module 20 on operant conditioning. So what is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning is a type of learning in which behavior is strengthened if followed by a reinforcer or diminished if followed by a punisher. Actions followed by reinforcers increase, those followed by punishment decrease. Operant behavior is behavior that operates on the environment to produce rewarding or punishing stimuli. In contrast to classical conditioning, which involves respondent behavior, automatic responses to a stimulus. If we look at this flowchart on operant conditioning, the behavior operates on the environment to produce the rewarding or punishing stimuli. Organisms associate their own actions with the consequences, and the actions followed by reinforcement increase, those followed by punishments often decrease. An example of this is if we were to actually go to work and do the work, we would realize after we do the work we will get paid. Therefore, we will continue to do the work because we know we'll be receiving the consequence, which is in this case a reinforcer or reward, which is the money that we make by work. So B.F. Skinner was one of the most famous behaviorists in psychology. He is very influential and very controversial. A fun fact about B.F. Skinner is that he did not believe in free will. He believed that individuals were slaves to their environment and that modifying human behavior was the only real way we could actually impact learning. He expanded on Edward L. Thorndike's law of effect, which states that rewarded behavior tends to recur. He developed behavioral technology that revealed principles of behavior control, and he designed and used an operant chamber, popularly known as the Skinner box, for experiments that included a bar, which is a lever that an animal presses, or a key or a disc the animal pecks, to release a reward of food or water, and also a device that records these responses. Here's an example of a cat in a puzzle box illustrating Thorndike's law of effect. The cat will realize that if the cat wants out of the box and it can press on that particular lever, that the door will open. By shaping animals' natural behaviors, Skinner was able to teach these animals unnatural behaviors, such as teaching pigeons to walk in a figure eight, play ping pong, and keep a missile on course by pecking at a screen target. Reinforcement is any event that strengthens the behavior it follows. So inside this Skinner box, you see in the bottom right, the rat presses a bar for a food reward. Outside, a measuring device, which is not shown, records the animal's accumulated responses. The rat knows if it presses the bar, then food will come out. The process of making this association is called shaping, and that means gradually guiding the behavior toward closer and closer approximations of the desired behavior. With this method of successive approximations, responses that are ever closer to the final desired behavior are rewarded, and all other responses are ignored. There are two basic types of reinforcers, which are positive reinforcers and negative reinforcers. Positive reinforcement increases behaviors by presenting the positive reinforcer, and it's any stimulus that, when presented after a response, strengthens the response. Negative reinforcement increases behaviors by stopping or reducing negative stimuli, and a negative reinforcer is any stimulus that, when removed after a response, strengthens the response. Note, negative reinforcement is not punishment. So, for instance, if a class decides, the professor says, if everyone gets an A on this paper, you do not have to take the next exam. The next exam might be seen as something as negative and would also be taken away, and that would be negative reinforcement if everyone received an A on their paper. In this chart, we see ways to increase behavior through reinforcers. On the left, we have operant conditioning terms, such as positive reinforcement. In the middle, we have description, which is adding a desirable stimulus. And an example is you pet a dog that comes when you call it, you pay the person who paints your house. Negative reinforcement is the remove an aversive stimulus, and for instance, you would take painkillers to end pain or fasten seatbelt to end loud beeping. Primary and conditioned reinforcers. A primary reinforcer is unlearned and innately reinforcing stimuli, such as those that satisfy biological needs. A conditioned or a secondary reinforcer is a stimulus that gains power through association with the primary reinforcer. There is also immediate and delayed reinforcers. Immediate occurs immediately after a behavior. So if the rat presses the lever, as we saw in the Skinner box, the next thing a food pellet is distributed, that is an immediate reinforcer. Delayed involves time delay between desired response of and delivery of reward, and this is similar to what we do when we get paid. We realize that we are doing work, but we will not get the money right away. We will get it at the end of the pay period. So one of the things that's challenging is schedules of reinforcement when it comes to operant conditioning. And the reinforcement schedule is a pattern that defines how often a desired response will be reinforced. A continuous reinforcement schedule involves reinforcing the desired response every time it occurs. A partial or intermittent reinforcement schedule involves reinforcing response only part of the time, results in a slower acquisition of a response, but much greater resistance to extinction than does continuous reinforcement. If we look at this chart from Skinner's laboratory pigeons, there are 4 different reinforcement schedules. We have the blue line on the left with fixed ratio, and you can see the black lines are the little lines are the reinforcers. You have a variable ratio, which is the green line, and you can see the black lines are not quite evenly spaced out versus fixed ratio. You have the fixed interval, which means that the organism realizes after a certain period, I press the lever 3 times, then I will get the food, that will happen. And you will see the steady responding where it happens almost every time in the variable interval, and what ends up happening is that it's not quite as strong a response, and you can see the lines that go straight up, the blue and the green line on the left, have a much higher number of responses over a shorter period of time. Schedules of reinforcement or partial reinforcement. If we have a ratio, we may have a fixed reinforcement. How does punishment affect behavior? Punishment administers an undesired consequence or withdraws something desirable in an attempt to decrease the frequency of a behavior. Positive punishment, presenting a negative consequence after an undesired behavior is exhibited, making the behavior less likely to happen in the future. Negative punishment is removing a desired stimulus after a particular undesired behavior is exhibited, resulting in reducing behavior in the future. Examples of punishment to decrease behavior, according to operant conditioning, can be a positive punishment. We may administer an aversive stimulus. An example would be spray water on a barking dog or give a traffic ticket for speeding. In terms of negative punishment, we may withdraw a rewarding stimulus, take away a misbehaving teen's driving privileges, or revoke a library card for non-payment of fines. There are 4 major drawbacks of physical punishment. Punished behavior is suppressed, not forgotten. This temporary state may negatively reinforce parents' punishing behavior. Punishment teaches discrimination among situations, perhaps only selectively decreasing the undesired behavior. Physical punishment can teach fear, and it may also increase aggression by modeling violence as a way to cope with problems. One of the key aspects of learning about operant conditioning is there are a number of applications that we encounter every day that we may or may not realize are benefits of this. So at school, electronic technologies and adaptive learning software are used in teaching and learning have helped realize Skinner's goal of individually paced, customized instruction with immediate feedback. In sports, behavioral methods implemented in shaping behavior and athletic performance. And at work, rewards successfully used to increase productivity and skill development. And at home, basic rules of shaping are used in parenting and to reinforce our own desired behaviors. Reinforcing desired behavior and extinguishing undesired ones. We might state a realistic goal in measurable terms. Let's say I would like to lose 10 pounds in the next 6 months. We decide how, when, and where we will work toward our goal. We may go up with a schedule. We may monitor how often we engage in that desired behavior. We would reinforce the desired behavior, let's say having something that we normally would eat that may actually, such as ice cream or dessert or something, and then eventually we will reduce the rewards gradually until we get to the point where we don't need them anymore in order to achieve